I have to say, I think we'll be back in lockdown by September. And I just wish Boris Johnson wouldn't make a whole series of promises that have never been delivered upon. So the head prefect, Matt Hancock, who tells us what to do, is caught flagrantly breaching social distancing rules. Michael Gove, as Tom said, comes back from holiday, but that's okay. He doesn't need to isolate at home. You know, when I came back from America, not only was I being called every day, they were knocking at the door, to make sure that I was in. And that's been experienced by huge numbers of people. But now we've got pubs and restaurants in Cornwall completely closed because the staff have been pinged. We've got major production lines at Nissan and other places like that, vital to the British economy, where effectively they're not operating in any way at all. But when it comes to the government, that's fine. Absolutely fine. We've got a new scheme that's just for you. And I don't know. I think there is, I think rule fatigue, lockdown fatigue, I think we're in a different place. Already we're starting to ignore what government tells us. We're making our own decisions. And I think if we see it's one rule for them or one rule for us, you will increasingly see a lack of respect for what government says. I object to the term Freedom Day. I mean, the idea that the government are going to say, it's your Freedom Day. We're giving you your freedoms. That implies that they own our freedoms when it should be the other way round. The whole point about living in a parliamentary democracy is we have the power, we have the freedom, we lend it to governments at general elections. So I don't even like the whole basis of it. It makes me absolutely mad. Is it Freedom Day? Well, look, I was at the Open Golf this week. There were 35,000 people there. It's Formula One today at Silverstone. There'll be 140,000 people there. Tomorrow, what's the difference? Well, nightclubs will open until everyone gets pinged if they got the NHS app. So the government really is saying that you can now walk up to a bar and order a beer. It's not Freedom Day at all, and we're going through a pingdemic. We're seeing pubs and restaurants closing because their staff have been pinged and they're being forced to self-isolate. We've got factories, including not too far away from your constituency, Nissan, in real trouble because of this. We now learn that the NHS app can actually ping you even if there's a big, thick brick wall between you and somebody else who's contracted COVID. So, as I say, I object to the term. It doesn't feel like Freedom Day. And I have to say, there are 500,000 people in France as we speak who've suddenly learned that even if they've been double jabbed, that when they come back to the United Kingdom, they're going to have to self-isolate. It certainly isn't Freedom Day for those 500,000 people. And I have to say, I think we'll be back in lockdown by September. And I just wish Boris Johnson wouldn't make a whole series of promises that have never been delivered upon. So, no, I'm frustrated. And, add to that the overnight news that the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has tested positive for coronavirus. He was in extended meetings with the Chancellor, the Prime Minister last week. So you would have thought, wouldn't you, that means that the government will all have to self-isolate. But, Deanna, it isn't quite like that. It is a different rule somehow for our leaders.
Well,
people saying horrible things will never go away. Let's be frank, Twitter is a sewer, all right? And had the internet existed in '96, I've no doubt Gareth Southgate would have received abuse just as bad as Marcus Rashford or any of the others have received. But, mainstream media, it's racism, this must be a huge story. Or maybe it is, but maybe, as I say, it's been put on there by agent provocateurs. I don't know. All I can tell you is this is the least racist country in the Western world, all right? And if there is a tiny minority who genuinely were abusive to those three players, well, none of us want to know them anyway, but they would be an absolutely tiny minority. What I'm talking about is public order. What I'm talking about in a modern age of global terrorism is how we manage major events. What I saw was failure that could have led to something catastrophic, and nobody is talking about it.
Now, we saw a number of companies being bullied online by these extreme activists, and those companies saying, oh dear, we're going to have to withdraw from advertising with GBNews. I'm pleased to say that over the last 2 or 3 days, several of those companies have said they're now having a rethink. But it really does represent cancel culture at its very, very worst. Well, GB News, from the very start, when Andrew Neil launched it, we've said that all opinions are welcome here, that we look for common ground in debates. We haven't shouted at each other yet. It may happen. I don't know.
Fine.
But the really important thing that GB News has said from the start is it wants to fight against cancel culture. The idea, because I don't like what you think, that somehow you should simply be banned. And I thought it was astonishing that the popular music group, Mumford & Sons, been around for over 15 years, massively successful group, #1 albums, and Wyn Marshall, one of the founders of that group, who happened to like a book that had been written about Antifa, who are the street activist group who wear masks, who are prepared to use violence. And whoever the author of that book was, Wyn Marshall made the point that this was an important book, it was worth reading and worth understanding. And because of that, the reaction to him from the Twitter hate mob, and they're out there. I mean, I think I know some of them personally, actually. And the reaction has been so vicious, so awful, that it's caused a distraction from what they do. And so he's actually going to leave Mumford & Sons. And I find that really, really shocking. Only 20% of this country are actually on Twitter. But goodness me, they do, in cultural terms, have some very real power.
As we came out of Wembley Station, and I looked down Wembley Way, I said to myself, what the Farage is going on here? Because there were only 65,000 people supposed to go into the game. What I saw before me, Dan, was 250,000 people. This most extraordinary human melee. And of course, the idiots that organised the game chose a time on a Sunday evening of 8 o'clock. What do you think very large numbers of unticketed young men were going to do all day until 8 o'clock? They were going to drink, weren't they? I mean, we can talk about changes of culture. The fact is, young English blokes have been doing this for centuries all over the world, and that was the first big mistake. The first big mistake was an 8 p.m. kickoff, which guaranteed problems. The second big mistake is, why were there not people at Wembley Station saying, unless you have a ticket, turn round and go back immediately? I saw no one giving that message. So we then had to get through a sort of human scrum that lasted several hundred yards. I was lucky. I had bodyguards, security guards with me to get me through. On my own, there's no way I would have made it. The worst that happened to me was a beer can hitting me on the back of the leg. We got through. I have to say, for the rest of the party I was with, they were very frightened and very intimidated. Then when we got to the front, we heard the noise as the barriers started to crash and as hundreds broke through into the stadium. And this was a very, very worrying moment. An hour later, it was even more serious. And a friend of mine reported a man being trapped under a fallen barrier, trapped by his legs, my friend helping him out. The stewards stood aside and did nothing. The police, at that moment before the game, were virtually invisible. And think about this. In 2015, at the height of the Paris terror attacks, at the Stade de France, before a French international, some sharp security guards stopped a man who was a suicide bomber. We could have had the worst terrorist attack this country has ever seen. We could have had a Hillsborough, because after 6 p.m., because of the number of people getting in without tickets, they literally closed the gates and kettled everybody. This was potentially one of the most public order events, most serious events in the history of our country. Now, I know that since the final whistle and since those penalties, there are some racist, horrible, nasty things that have been said on Twitter. Whether they're said by genuine England fans or whether they're by agents provocateurs anonymously on the internet from Russia, I don't know. And of course, things being said that are nasty about people aren't fun. But believe me, I have been going to sporting events for the last 40 years. I go to everything: rugby, football, cricket, horse racing, tennis, you name it. I'm a sports nut. I have never seen a worse organised or more dangerous event than I saw at Wembley on Sunday. And shame on the FA, shame on the police, and shame on Sadiq Khan, who is Mayor of London and has responsibility and oversight for all of these things. It was a massive, massive balls up of the highest order. And, Boris, if you really think, after what occurred the other day, that we're going to successfully have a bid for the World Cup in 2030, you've got another thing coming. There needs to be an immediate public inquiry into what went wrong.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.